Welcome back to Rebuild Projects. Well, this episode is all about correcting some mistakes I made in the initial construction of the hull sides. They're not as fair as I intended them to be. A little bit of a wow. They look good from straight on, but there's a little wow to them. So we're going to keep fairing them out. I'm going to share with you the mistakes I made and that I've noticed, and how I'm going to go by correcting them, some of the techniques and whatnot. But by the end of it, after multiple rounds of filling and sanding and fairing, we are going to lock it all in with some primer and then hopefully shoot the whole boat with some top coat.
You're watching Rebuild Projects.
Last summer, I was in the middle of spot filling all the hull sides when our project got a little sidetracked. But over the last few months, I've added more filler to the hull, which brings us to today. I need to sand back that filler so I can add more filler, much more filler, to make it nice and fair. Now let the fun begin. We start off by sanding both hull sides down with 80 grit sandpaper. This just gives the next layers a good tooth to hold on to. Then I wipe everything down with acetone to clean it all up. Now, I use this straight edge a lot to check my gaps, make sure everything is nice and straight and fair. And once I've done that, I can mix up some hardener and some filler. Now, I just kind of eyeball it now. As long as I mix it really well, I know that I just have to get it on quick. And when you apply it really quick, it kind of cools it down. So I'm spreading it out to cool it down because I only have about 5 to 10 minutes after I start applying it to work with it. Once it's on, I can level it out using that straight edge. I come back with a 14-inch trowel, and I'm trying to just get it in there, get it really on that last layer, pressing it pretty hard, but making it nice and smooth. Now I take this extra step to, just before it kicks, I knock down any of the high parts with a taping trowel. I'm using, very gentle, deliberate, and fast motions just to flatten out the top. It helps with the sanding, and it also just makes the next layer when you're spreading it on that much easier. So gentle, deliberate, quick motions. Very gentle. But it's well worth it, this extra little step. And then when that's all done, I've learned just to leave it alone. Don't come back. Maybe clean up an edge or two, but do not come back because you don't want to screw up your work. And because I don't really weigh or measure my hardener, I just do it by eye, I've learned to just take an infrared gun and check it to make sure the temperature's going higher, everything's kicking. I look at the hull and then compare it to the filler, and it really just allows me to know that, okay, we're on the right track here. So this is the first coat, and I'm going to let it dry overnight and make sure that it dries nice and hard so that I could come back and apply more coats the next day, which I have. So I've already started. This is the third coat. The second coat I filled some real low spots to the right here, and those have already kicked. And now I've come back on my third coat. In this coat, I'm just trying to smooth everything out. I want to make a nice even coat from the chine to the gunnel, and this will just give me a little bit more reassurance that I'm filling those lows and smoothing everything else. Now, I know this last coat is pretty much going to get all sanded off, but it's good practice for me at least, just to know that it's all the same fairing from bottom to top. And that's how I like to work. I work and I pull everything from the bottom up I find that it reduces sagging and drips, for me at least. So I go over the rest of the hull on both sides. And then when I'm working with filler, if I have any left over, I just come back to where I started and make sure. Sometimes if I have enough working time and before it kicks, I'll just give everything one last smooth out. And there we go. We have two sides ready for sanding. I think I let this dry for 2 days just to make sure that everything was going to be nice and dry. And a couple days later, and everything's nice and dry, so I take my straight edge and I'm just checking my work. Once it's dry, it could have been a little different from when I applied it, but I'm making sure that I've filled any of those gaps that I kind of had in my mind. I want to fill them high, so kind of convex. So, what I'm trying to go for here is taking my longboard and using the gunnel edge at the top and any high points in the middle and just flattening everything else out. So, I think I spent another 2 days sanding to get it where I wanted, and I may have even put a little more filler here and there, but through using the longboard, I basically used every sanding tool that I had, and I even came up with a new one. But at the end of the day, after, like I said, a few days of sanding, I got it exactly where I wanted. But you may be thinking, why is he doing all this extra work?
Since last August, I've had, some mixed feelings about the hull sides. So back in August, when the boat was outside, I got to look at the hull sides in the sunlight, and they weren't bad. They were the actual finish to them was nice. I had done a good job there. I'd done some, spot fairing and sanding, but when I started looking at the trueness of them, I wasn't really happy because, right along this midsection, so right along here in the boat, about 16 inches from the chine and about 20 inches down from the gunnel top, that's pretty much where the connection point from the new and the old parts of the boat are. It is a really solid hull side because it's constructed with the old hull, new fiberglass panels, followed by woven roving, 1708, chop mat, followed by multiple coats of fairing. Like it's a sturdy hull side. But when you're looking at it down this way, not from front, you start seeing a little bit, or you did see a little bit of a bulge, a little bit of a muffin top or a love handle, and I couldn't stop looking at it when I saw it. So even though I didn't get it painted last August, I think it's a good thing because I've been able to bring it in here and for the last few days really refine what I saw was a mistake and a problem. So I went heavy, filled up the concave so it was actually convex, and then sanded everything back. And that started making it look a little bit better. I took this pneumatic sander here and I was able to work it and get that nice and flat. But anytime you're using, whether this is 2 3/4 inch or even a 4-inch sander, it works, but you get little imperfections. What I came up with I did a last skim coat, a very light one, and then I don't know if you guys have if you've ever done a drywall. This is called a drywall hawk. Basically, you take your drywall compound, when you're taping the seams of your drywall, you throw it on here and it's easier to
to play with and move and stuff. So I took one of them, sanded it down so it's nice and perfectly flat underneath. I happen to have a bunch of large format sandpaper that you would normally use with a rectangular floor finisher. This happens to be 120 grit, and I just glued it onto my drywall hawk, excuse me, and it's worked out really well to have a very flat, large surface hand sander, and I just use it in a circular motion, and it works a charm. Makes it very flat, and unlike using, you know, a 6-inch or even your orbital sander, you don't get depressions, you don't burn into it and create any swirls, because you got this whole surface area to play with. So this was kind of my last final polishing sanding, and I think it's turned out really well, because not only the concaves were quite bad, they were like 2/8 to 3/8 of an inch in the worst spot, and now it's really quite good. So the next stage is to wipe this all down with acetone, so give it an acetone bath. Once that's ready to go, we are going to come back. I've got a gallon of the 2-part epoxy primer left, so that's the gray primer we used once before. So we'll use that up. Paint break. Hey guys, welcome back. It's been about a day and a half. The epoxy primer that I put on is dry, ready to be sanded down with 180 grit. It is a barrier coat, which locks in all of the work I did, all the different fairings that I've feathered, and there's old fairing from when we first put on the boat, like my DIY resin and Cabasil mix. So we sanded through that, and then there's some suspect auto body filler. I use Rage, which is a good filler, but there's some auto body filler in a layer, and then this last layer has been all good marine filler fairing. But you know, there's multiple layers all feathered in there, and then some areas I burned right through into the fiberglass. So in order for that not to affect and react with any of the top coats, that's why I put the epoxy. I think it's good practice, but that's got to get sanded down with 180 so that we can do another barrier coat or intermediary coat, and that is going to be slick sand. So not sponsored. I wish it was, because a gallon is so expensive, but highly recommended. I have family members who've used it on their car restoration projects. I've heard and watched YouTube people who really recommend it for fiberglass jobs. They say because it's a polyester-based primer surfacer, that it's perfect for this application. And basically what we're going to do is mix it up. Now, it's supposed to be, well, it's very unique on its own, but if you think of it kind of, in my mind, like a gel coat, where there's the paint and then there's a hardener, and you mix it up in a certain ratio. I think it's 100 to 2, so 2%, and you do it in smaller batches because it will want to kick. And you spray it on, and you spray it on like you would painting, but you use quite a big aperture nozzle, so like a 1.8 to 2.2, 2.4, kind of like you would with a gel coat. And then you spray it on in a millimeter or a 2 millimeter thickness. Now, I only have a gallon of it, and I'm hoping a gallon can get me around the whole boat. I'm not trying to build it up as much because I put a lot of attention into the sanding back. I'm just trying to get a uniform coat, which will just make my top coats that much more pretty. It'll just make it a lot better looking. Less bleed through, less haloing, all the reactions that could take place. It should just block that, right? Speaking of top coats, now I'm getting excited because this is a paint that I chose months ago when I was first going to paint the boat, and it's this kind of blue-gray. I love it. I got it. I love it for a couple reasons. I love the color. I think it's going to be a real marine nautical beautiful boat when it's out on the water. But I also love it because I got it from the marina, local marina, who paints boats in the summer, and they were painting this big 35-foot, sport fisher boat. And the owner of that boat wanted to color match the paint they already had. So whoever mixed the paint or bought the paint at the time, mixed the whole 5-gallon pail that they had that they needed to paint the boat, and then tested it to the color that was already there. And didn't go well for them, but it went well for me because I got the paint, a 5-gallon pail of it, for a fraction of the price. They almost gave it away to me, which means I should be able to paint the whole boat, all of the hull, the transom and the bow deck, all the way down to this part here, with at least 2 to 3 coats if I'm lucky, and then still have half a pail left over. So I could be doing touch-ups with that paint for years if I seal it, maybe vacuum it, transfer it, I don't know. But I'm very happy with that, and that's a marine topside paint, so that'll be from the chine all the way to the gunnel top, and then from this gunnel edge here all the way in through the cockpit is going to be the gray gel coat. We already have 1 coat in there, but I got 3 gallons left, and I think gel coat is definitely the way to go in a cockpit. Durability, so whether you're fishing, you're beating things up, or having a little party, or whatever you may be doing, gel coat is the way to go. And then I can just see it now because this color scheme, we're going to have white grab bars down the Euro transom on each side. We've got the bow deck bar, the bow deck railing, that is powder coated white aluminum, 1.5 inches. So nice and thick and robust. And then one of the final projects, after we get it in the water and get everything tested, we are going to take my last tonneau cover that I had, and we are going to make a hard top. But I'm going to also weld up some aluminum round bar, basically 1.5 inch aluminum round bar, and we're going to make some sort of arch that ties into the supports that I already have in these gunnel caps. I made this whole thing into a support, and that will allow us to have, a white hard top that's kind of cantilevered out. It's going to look real awesome and slick. So all white, offset with these. And then the trailer is painted the same burgundy as the truck. Oh, yeah, buddy. It's going to be great. So, gets me excited to keep going. Okay, I got a bunch of sanding that I have to do, degreasing. We got to pull the shower curtain paint booth in, prep all of the spray guns and the compressor. Quite a bit left to do today, so that we can spray it with slick sand.